pedophilia allegations against Vatican clergy.
After sexual
a mass
abuse
action
charges
suit
have
which
been
might bring
filed.
the
Catholic
Vatican-
Archbishop
This
has
might be
been
the largest
arrested
hurricane
inside the
ever.
Vatican as part of a paedophile investigation. The Vatican said Yusuf Vasilovsky.
A secret city built on faith, hiding centuries of power and corruption. A man no one expected rises from the ashes of scandal. He shook the Vatican to its core. He faced enemies within the church. And in the end, he paid the price. This is the untold story of Pope Francis, the revolutionary, the reformer, the man who dared to clean up the church and died trying. Vatican, the world's smallest nation-state, with a total area of less than half a square kilometer and a population of less than 1,000 persons, is the center of authority over almost 1.5 billion Catholic followers around the globe. It's the Mecca of Catholicism. At the heart of Vatican's power sits the Pope, a title so glorified it makes kings and queens envious. Unfortunately, the Vatican is littered with scandals and conspiracies. From Pope John Paul I falling dead, just 33 days into his throne, to mafia ties and money laundering using the Vatican Bank, not to mention the systemic cover-ups of sexual abuse by the priests and runaway pedophilia within the church.
Catholic Archbishop has been arrested inside the Vatican as part of a paedophile investigation.
Sex abuse scandal rocking the Catholic Church.
A mega bombshell in Vatican. Mafia dealings and blood money involved.
Triggering widespread anger and condemnation. The Holy See had become a symbol not of holiness, but of evil, secrets, and injustice. A modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah. However, a humble man from the streets of Argentina would come to sweep the filthy Vatican clean. On 17th of December, 1936 in Buenos Aires, a boy by the name Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born of Argentinian-Italian parents. While in his early 20s, he had a severe respiratory infection that resulted in the removal of part of his lung. The young Jorge decided to join Catholicism in 1958 after miraculous recovery. As fate would have it, he was ordained a Catholic priest in 1969 and later the provincial superior in Argentina. Around this time, an ugly war broke out in Argentina. The military kidnapped, tortured, and disappeared more than 30,000 civilians. It was a national massacre. At the time, the country's church hierarchy openly collaborated with the military junta as it kidnapped, tortured, and killed thousands of leftists. Jorge conspired at the theological seminary he directed, providing refuge and safe passage to dozens of priests and political dissidents marked for elimination by the military regime. He was later promoted to the Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998. Jorge hated luxuries and lived a modest life. He often used public transport and cooked his own meals while living in a small apartment as an archbishop. In a world of red robes and golden thrones, he walked in worn shoes and spoke like a man of the people. He became known for humility and directness. Jorge never campaigned for higher church office. In fact, he tried to avoid it. To his surprise, he was crowned a cardinal in 2001 by Pope John Paul II. Jorge's rise was astronomical. There was no doubt he was meant for greatness. On 28th February 2013, a rare, unfortunate event happened in Vatican that would change Jorge's life forever. The sitting Pope, Benedict XVI, resigned, allegedly for health reasons. This would be the first ever papal resignation in over 600 years of Vatican papacy.
Popes can't resign. If you do this, you will damage the papacy forever.
I cannot play this role anymore.
The church needed a radical change. Many cardinals fought for the deserted throne, circling it like a pack of wolves. All the front-runners to the throne were European cardinals. Jorge Bergoglio was not on anyone's list. But as fate would have it, on the 5th round of elimination, Jorge emerged as the surprise winner. He would be Benedict's successor. He had finally reached the peak, becoming the leader to 1 billion followers. Few leaders had such powers. He chose the papal name Francis, symbolizing humility. After his election, he turned down the papal cape and the golden cross, signifying his dislike for formalities and trappings of power. He knew he had tough work cut out before him. He immediately began targeting Vatican corruption by cleaning up the Vatican Bank, a then mafia's favorite for laundering dirty money. He then moved swiftly to demote or fully terminate powerful cardinals implicated in abuse or fraud.
The paedophile investigation. The Vatican said Yusuf Vasilovsky is accused of
Likewise, launched investigations into financial misconduct inside the Vatican. Cardinal Angelo Becciu, the most senior Catholic Church official ever to stand trial before a Vatican criminal court, was convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to 5.5 years in jail, followed by total disbandment as a member of clergy. This sent fear to all corners of the Vatican. The message was clear. There's a new sheriff in town, and he means business. However, he faced fierce backlash as he had expected. In 2017, Pope Francis spoke out against unnamed traitors who were holding back his institutional reforms. A German cardinal, Gerhard Müller, denounced an influential coterie around Francis and criticized the Pope's doctrinal confusion. Concurrently, Cardinal George Pell wrote an anonymous note describing Francis's papacy as a disaster. He wasn't just fighting sin, he was fighting a system that protected it. Pope Francis tried to build an all-inclusive church. He was a first pope to champion LGBT rights. He aggressively pushed the Catholic Church to be more welcoming of same-sex couples and transgender people. Early in his papacy, he famously responded to a question about gay priests. Who am I to judge? He knew a great number of Catholic priests were homosexuals. In fact, during his reign, Pope Francis opened the door for the ordination of openly gay men to the priesthood as long as they remained celibate. He welcomed trans individuals in private audiences. Prior to this, many sexual abuse scandals involving gay priests, minors, and nuns had put the Catholic Church on the spotlight. It was a horrific pattern of long-term sexual abuse, with the church hierarchy aggressively covering up to save face.
A mass action suit which might bring
Catholic Archbishop has been arrested inside the Vatican as part of a paedophile investigation.
After a long history of denying the wrongdoing, Pope Francis took the boldest action in 2018. He dismissed Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, who was found guilty of sexual abuse against the minors, adults, and gross abuse of power. He was the most senior church official to be dismissed from clergy for sexual misconduct. Pope Francis was serious in fighting the demonic sexual monster roaming freely within the church, devouring innocent lives. He met with the survivors of abuse and apologized publicly for the inhumane acts carried out by church clergy. He opened dialogue with atheists, Muslims, and Jews despite their differing opinions. He tried to make the church less of a fortress and more of a family where everyone felt welcome and acknowledged. In the 12 years of his pontificate, Pope Francis visited 68 countries, giving life to a tireless mission to take the word of God to every corner of the world. From Africa to South America, no place was too far for Pope Francis. He walked among refugees, hugged lepers, kissed prisoners, and gave hope to the hopeless. Where others sent blessings, Pope Francis showed up in person. However, one thing that escaped everyone's eyes was his frail health. In 2024, he fell sick and was rushed to Gemelli Hospital in Rome, where he got admitted. Upon inspection, doctors said his respiratory organs had developed serious complications, a case that demanded a quick surgery. His childhood disease had come to haunt him. Unfortunately, the situation deteriorated after the surgery. Despite this, the Pope still gave short blessings from his hospital balcony. He was a selfless leader.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
Even as his body broke, his spirit wouldn't bend. The world stood still on a gray March morning as the Vatican's bells tolled a haunting, uneven rhythm. Inside Rome's Gemelli Hospital, Pope Francis, breath shallow, eyes glassy, muttered his final words. "Protect the poor, forgive the church." Moments later, as storm clouds cracked over St. Peter's Basilica, monitors flatlined and the heart of a global faith stopped beating. On March 17, 2025, Pope Francis died at the Gemelli Polyclinic, aged 88. News flashed with breaking news of Pope's death across the globe. World and religious figures mourned his death. Condolences flooded the Vatican from all corners of the world. Outside, thousands gathered instinctively in the square, some weeping, others whispering prayers into the wind. Lightning struck the mighty dome, casting an eerie glow across the Vatican skyline. Inside, the papal ring was removed, broken in ritual silence. Cardinals knelt, not just in mourning, but in fear, because the man who dared to challenge corruption, embrace the outcast, and open ancient doors to modern truth in Vatican was gone. Pope Francis had defied tradition, disturbed power, and became, in death, more dangerous to the old guard than ever in life. He was never supposed to be a pope, but he became the one the world so desperately needed. A man of contradictions, soft but strong, old but radical. In the Church's darkest hour, he lit a candle and brought forth hope in Vatican and across the globe.